Okay, we are ready to go.
Great, thank you. Good evening, and I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Finance and Claims Committee for today. What is today? Thursday, March 20th, 2025, beginning at 5:32 p.m. We'll start with the roll call. Council Member Doug Sutton is present. Council Member Ann Witherstrand.
Here.
Thank you. Council Member Heather Dunn
Here.
is here. Great. Council Member Johan Lopez, who just joined, is present, and myself, Greg Burnett. So we have a quorum. Great, thank you. Third item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. First, the public hearing dated February 13th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the public hearing minutes? Councilmember Heather Dunn, thank you. Any additions, deletions, or changes to those minutes? Yes.
I just saw a few. On page 1 of the first public hearing, on February 13th, it looked like the date needed to be corrected. I don't know if people are seeing that. It should be February 13th. And it said Board of Estimate and Taxation. It should be Finance and Claims.
Okay, yes.
And then if they would put my name under attendees and not others for that one.
Okay, great. Thank you for those. Any other additions, deletions, or changes? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the minutes with the necessary correction from the public hearing, show by raise of hand. All those opposed have the same right. It's unanimous. Thank you. And the second set of minutes was from the special meeting on February 13th, 2025. Do we have a motion on the minutes from the special meeting? Councilmember Johan Lopez, thank you. Any additions, deletions, or changes? I have just a few minor ones. Starting on page 1, under other, the spelling of Lunda Asmani, his last name is spelled Asmani. So that correction. And on page 5, the first paragraph where it reads, "This Sunday at midnight," the word "the" should be striked out. And in the second paragraph, the last sentence where it says Mr. Smith added that it should be grandless, not grantless. And then in the third paragraph, the third sentence where it says may cause questions, then it will be answered. It should be THAN. And then in the last paragraph where the last sentence, it says he added that people will have ample opportunities to prove it. The word "if" should be inserted in there, if they reside in Norwalk. And then finally, on page 7, the first sentence where it says Mr. Freya asked that the software system, strike out the word processing system and add software. So those are the updates. Do we have any additional? Yes, Councilmember Ann Witherstrand.
I guess I was really read the minutes this week.
Good, great.
So on page 8, I believe it's the paragraph that starts with Mr. Burnett should read said that the committee's role is to decide the amount of the operating budget recommendation, not capital.
Right.
Okay, and that was it.
Great. Any other additions, deletions, or changes? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the minutes from the special meeting with the necessary corrections, show by a raise of hand, and it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to item 4, which is public participation. And I see we do not have anyone listed as an attendee currently. So at this time, we will close public participation and continue on in the agenda. And we will start off with the report from our tax collector, item A, narrative on tax collection stated March 2025. Item B, monthly tax collectors report dated February 2025, and claims committee report dated March 2025. So over to our tax collector, I won't say the chicken person, but Lisa B. Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Burnett.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I will start with the claims because it does require a vote. We do have a lot of claims this month. Collection cycle was over, so we were able to work on refunds. We do have the one special request. It is for a dollar amount threshold over $10,000. It is for motor vehicle prorations for one of our leasing companies, A-Car Leasing Limited. The amount is $15,375.60. And I do need you to vote on that. That is for multiple years and multiple vehicles that had motor vehicle credits processed by our assessor's division. Those bills were paid prior to the abatements being processed, and we now owe the leasing company a refund. They will then refund those funds to various taxpayers who pay their taxes through their vehicle leases. So those are folks waiting on their refunds from their leasing company. And we would like to get that approved if you would.
So we have an item to vote on, which is the Claims Committee report dated March 2025. We have one item that is beyond the $10,000 threshold. Do we have a motion to approve the Claims Committee report? Councilmember Ann Weatherstern, thank you. Do we have any questions on this item? Hearing, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor show by a raise of hand, and it is unanimous. Thank you. So we will move this item to the full Common Council for review and approval on Tuesday, March 25th.
Thank you. Moving on to the narrative and the monthly report for the end of February. Our current collection rate at the end of February was at 97.07% for the current levy. That was right where we needed to be. And if you recall, at the end of January, we were significantly lower. We were in the 60s because a lot of payments came through still within the payment deadline, which was February 3rd. But those were processed during the month of February. So really, we didn't know where we stood until the end of the month of February. That amount will continue to go up because we still have 4 months, March through June of the current fiscal year to get that higher than 97%, but that's right where we need it to be for now. With regard to past due taxes at this point, we've already issued delinquent notices, which are called demand notices, notices for payment. Real estate went out the beginning part of this week. Business personal property is going out the end of this week. We staggered it, and we will do motor vehicles next month. I know that they're already in folks' mailboxes because we've already got some calls about it. We will file our lien continuing certificates after the 1st of April. We're giving taxpayers who owe real estate and sewer use through the end of March to make their payments to avoid the placement of the lien continuing certificate. So that is happening within the next couple of weeks. And one other thing I did want to know, there's a lot of other things going on that I included in the narrative, but importantly, the tax sale redemption period for our September 9th tax sale did end on Monday, March 10th. We did have, of the original 200 plus properties, we did have 4 that did not redeem. So we deeded those properties over to the new owners on March 11th. And what we are doing now is we're in the process of turning the overbid over to the Superior Court and sending a mailing to the owners, former owners, and to all who had a recorded lien, a co-ate lien on those properties, to let them know that the overbid is going to be with the Stamford Superior Court, and they have the right to claim that overbid or portion thereof. I've already talked with 2 of the owners, and they're aware of it, but we go through a process where we send a certified letter and so forth for that. The city of Norwalk does not make a profit on tax sale properties, regardless of how much they sell for. If they sell for more than we are owed, which in these cases of these 4, they did, they sold for more than we were entitled to collect. That money gets turned over to the court and a judge decides who gets it. We did collect, in addition to our taxes, we collected blight fees. We also collected from the overbid some motor vehicle taxes that were due, that were delinquent from one of the former owners. And we also collected about $2,400 on behalf of the first taxing district. They had a couple of liens, so we made them whole. So we helped out a couple of other entities with this endeavor. Beyond that, beyond April and May, we're looking for the Board of Estimate to be setting the new tax rates at the beginning of May and looking ahead to getting bills out probably in June. So that's what's coming up. It's already the end of March, really. But I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have about what we're doing.
Do we have any questions? Just one question, just, you spoke on behalf of the tax sale, which was a success. With those 4 properties, is that somewhat consistent with past tax sales, or?
It is. That's a good question. We usually start with about 220, between 220 to 250 properties. We're usually left with about a dozen at the time of the sale. This time we were left with fewer than that. We were left with only 7. We did have a number of properties filed for bankruptcy at the very last moment. We had, I think, 4 or 5 filed for bankruptcy protection, so we had to take them out of the sale. We could not sell them at that time. But to have roughly 7 in the sale and then have 4 deed over, that's about what we usually have. So the point of the sale being, is not necessarily to transfer ownership of a property from one individual to another, but rather to collect. It's an enforcement measure to collect past due taxes. So if we start with 225 properties and we end up having to sell only 7 and deed over only 4, with all the others paying and us collecting close to $6.8 million on the sale. For this reason, we say that the sale is an efficient and effective enforcement method that gets that money in. And that's why we do them every 2 years, to try not to allow a situation to get really beyond the point where a person can pay the taxes off. We find if we do them every 2 years, our taxpayers are able to address the delinquency and pay the taxes off and never make it to the sale. The ideal tax sale would be a sale where you don't have a sale at all. Everybody pays prior to the sale. But this is just about consistent with what we usually get. And our next one would probably be in July of 2026, unless we possibly do a mini sale in the meantime on behalf of the zoning enforcement folks who are interested in having us pursue tax sale for some zoning enforcement violation fines that have not been timely paid.
Great. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Ann Witherspoon.
Not really a question. I just wanted to make a comment on the second to last paragraph of your narrative, Lisa, where you say that you'd like to share that this date marks my 25-year anniversary of employment with the city of Norwalk. In that time, I have worked under 4 mayors, 5 CFOs, with 4 assessors and 3 software systems. And the tax levy has increased from approximately 167 million in 2000 to upwards of 400 million. So I really appreciated that you included that. And I just wanted to comment on that and congratulate you for 25 years of work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. It's really, things have really changed, right? The levy has gone up a lot. We still have a staff of 8. Staff is the same as it was when I got here. But we do a lot more of our own enforcement now. So it's been interesting.
Great. And thank you for pointing that out. And we know, Lisa, you're at a conference and sharing best practices and bringing some great insight back to Norwalk. So we don't want to hold you too much longer. So enjoy the conference, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
I'll be here next month. I appreciate your allowing me to go. Thank you all very much. And the city of Norwalk has a very good reputation in the state among the tax collectors. They know that we do all our own enforcement, and a lot of people like to talk to us about what we do and how we bill. Today we were talking about how we bill our sewer on our real estate bill. We're the only ones that do it quite the way we do it, and people are interested in it. A couple of them are trying to do it that way, the town of Branford being one of them. They're switching over to the way we do it to save money and be more efficient and so forth. So thankfully, we have a good relationship among our colleagues, and these conferences are a really good opportunity for us to share. So I appreciate being allowed to go. Thank you.
Well, don't share too much information without sending them a bill, because
I should try that, right?
right.
I'll think about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll see you next month.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, which is the Oak Hills Park Authority monthly financial statement for January 2025. We will table this report until the April meeting at this time. So we will move forward in the agenda to item E, which is the tax assessor's report and resolution. So we will start with the resolution. I'll read it, and then we'll have discussion on this resolution, which reads as follows. Whereas the city of Norwalk, acting through its tax assessor, makes an assessment of property taxes on motor vehicles on October 1st of each year in accordance with section 12-40 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Whereas for assessment years commencing on or after October 1st, 2024, any municipality may, by vote of its legislative body, elect to apply the modified schedule of depreciation under section 12-63B7B of the Connecticut General Statutes. Whereas the Common Council is the legislative body of the city of Norwalk, be it resolved that the Common Council of the city of Norwalk hereby elects to apply the modified schedule of depreciation under section 12-63B7B of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended and in effect on the date of this resolution commencing from October 1st, 2024 grand list. Do we have a motion on this item? Council Member Heather Dunn, thank you. And we have with us our tax Assessor Paul Gorman and our CFO Jared Smith to provide detail on this resolution.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. As you all know, for months, we've been talking about this change at the state level of the motor vehicle tax methodology and also the mill rate. And the methodology is one aspect of it. And what that said in the current law was that you would have to start valuing motor vehicles at 85% of the MSRP. So in the first year that a vehicle is purchased, when it's brand new, it's the value of it is 85% of the MSRP. Recently, about a month ago, the legislature changed that. I shouldn't say, let me correct that. They didn't change it, but they offered an alternative to that, where towns could opt into starting that schedule at 90%. So instead of it being 85% of the value, it would start at 90% of the value. So what does that mean? That means that our if you were to adopt this, if the Common Council were to adopt this, our grand list, our motor vehicle grand list would increase. It means that the break, I'll call it the tax break that motor vehicle owners had been anticipating as a result of this change will be slightly less than what they were anticipating, because we're now calculating the grand list and the value of motor vehicles at that higher rate. So we were asking, as the resolution says, this needs to go to the Common Council for approval in order for us to switch to this alternative schedule. We believe it's a good thing to do, given our current situation where we have a lot of the increase really hitting the real estate, the residential real estate side of things. So so if we can shift that even just a little bit, as this does, back to motor vehicle, and they would, as I said, wouldn't get quite as much of a break, then we think this is a good way to go. So I think that's the long and short of it, and happy to take any questions. Paul is here. We've calculated the tax value of this to be about $1.8 million in tax value, so that that would reduce the amount of revenue that we would get from motor vehicles by about 1.8 million, and would increase it, would shift it to other areas of property taxes. So happy to take any questions that you might have.
Yes, Councilmember Ann Witherspoon.
Thank you for that. My question, so the 1.8 million, does that offset the 10 million figure that we were given before? That was sort of what the general cost or the motor vehicle tax that the city would not be collecting due to this new legislative standard. So the 1.8 sort of offsets the 10 million.
So yeah, yes and no.
Okay.
Yeah, so there were two, if you remember, there were two components of it
Okay.
that the state was imposing on local governments. And so one component was the methodology, which really accounted for about $2 million of the decrease in revenue. And then the other one was the reduction in mill rate that we were required to do to lower the motor vehicle rate at least as low as the lowest real estate mill rate. And so what this will do, because the 90% is really part of the methodology, not part of the mill rate aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really offsetting the $2 million and effectively kind of wipes that off, almost wipes it out.
All right.
the impact of that. So it brings the total impact down to about 10.1, $10.2 million between the two aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to this resolution? Oh, yes, Councilmember Johan Lopez.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jared. Jared, quick question. Going forward, what are some of the assumptions that have to be taken into consideration when undertaking revenue projections? Like, do you have to look at trade-ins, new purchases, et cetera, going forward, beyond the immediate, beyond the what's happening now?
I think I'll have Paul answer that. I don't believe any of that will, I don't think any of that will be effective, but I know Paul Gorman's on, and it's a more detailed question that maybe he can answer.
Could you repeat it, because you were kind of, I couldn't hear you too well.
All right, thanks, Paul. No, so I was asking, moving forward, when it comes to revenue projections, if some of those revenue projections are undertaken, when it comes to the motor vehicle tax, what are some of the assumptions that have to be considered, such as, new purchases or trade-ins, et cetera?
Well, all that does get taken into consideration, but there's no way to project that. I mean, we've never, in any town that I've ever worked in, including here in Norwalk, no one's ever really tracked data to see like what the trend was for people upgrading or downgrading their cars. I mean, there's just so many moving parts. I mean, could we develop something? Probably. It would be a pretty complicated spreadsheet, and it would take a long time to really hone the data, because like I said, we're dealing with 76,000 cars and then a turnover of like 14,000 of them at the supplemental time. And now we're not getting things in one big batch with the supplemental. We're getting them on a monthly basis. So we would have to correlate that. I mean, I can get together with Jared and a couple of people from my office that are really car savvy. We could see if we could come up with something that could produce a projecting, because I could see how it could be useful, but it's not something we have readily available right now.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Appreciate that.
So, my question is in its simplest form, changing the resolution from 85 to 90%, is this causing the Norwalk resident who has a vehicle, will their tax bill go up or down?
It's still going to go down, but it's going to go down by less than what we had originally thought.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's because now you're applying that different factor to the value of the vehicle, instead of applying 85%, obviously a lower number, you're applying 90%. So it's gonna inflate the dollar amount and the value of the vehicle. But we still have that second aspect of it that's really driving. That's the bigger factor that's helping to drive down the tax impact on motor vehicles, which is the mill rate. Having to move that mill rate down is really driving the tax rate and the total tax revenue on motor vehicles way down by about $10 million. So they're getting a break. It's going to be a little bit smaller break than what we had been talking about.
Just to add to that, just to put it in a raw number, I mean, we're most likely looking at it, and Jared, you can confirm because you guys have done some estimations, but we're looking at probably around a 10 or maybe a little more than 10 drops in the mill rate points on cars, because we're at 3246, which was the state maximum last year, and Rowayton's was our lowest tax rate last year at 22.0516. If all things were to stay the same, that's the rate we would have to match. So that's nearly a 10.5-point drop.
Right.
Like Jared said, they're still getting a decent break. They're just not getting as much of a break as we originally anticipated.
Yep. And so that mill rate is going down to probably about 22. With this change and maybe a couple other smaller things, once we go to set the mill rate, it will end up somewhere around 22 for motor vehicles versus the 32.46, which I think it was this year.
And is this a annual percentage change, or are we locked into this for any period of time? If we go to 90%, do we have to be consistent, or do we have the option each year to change this percentage?
That's a good question. I don't know if I assume that we would have the ability to change it back. I don't know. I'm not sure why we would do that. But we may have that ability to go back to it. It's a good question. I don't know, Paul, do you know that? Has that come up in any of your meetings?
No, I mean, and it would be kind of a logistical nightmare to, I mean, to go to this and then go back to it a couple of years later and then just stay at the other rate, that'd be okay. But to the concept that Greg, you had posited of being able to do it yearly to change back and forth, I don't know that the state even anticipated somebody thinking of that. I mean, I could make a couple of calls tomorrow and see if I can get an answer about that, about whether or not we're allowed to go back and forth. But like Jared said, I don't see that there would be a need to do it, because if you're on the 90% scale and then you jump down to the 85% scale, and then you jump back to the 90% scale in another year, you've got the same person with the same car that's going to be getting different valuation rates all over the place. The concept of going with the MSRP as opposed to the sales price of cars was to try to bring some consistency to the pricing, and we would just be getting rid of that. I think once we get this set in at 90%, it's got a 20-year lifespan where it degrades down to a base value of 15% or $500, whichever is greater, but assessment still can't go below $500. I think that we probably would want to just stay here.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I was just making sure we were aware of all of our options, that if we vote in the affirmative of this resolution, that, you know, it will be, you know, whether we have the flexibility or we locked in. And if we say 90%, then it's going to always be 90%, and we don't have any flexibility of changing. Not sure, to your point, that we would consider that, but just wanted to make sure the council was aware of what we're voting on and if we had any flexibility at all.
Yeah. I'll get an answer for that before you guys have to go to the council. I'll make some calls tomorrow.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Do we have any other questions related to this resolution? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this resolution show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous. Okay, great. So we will move this item to the full Common Council on Tuesday, March 25th for final review and approval. Continuing in the agenda, before we continue, Paul, did you have anything else you want to share from the tax assessor's office?
Sure. Today was a milestone day in the sense that the Board of Assessment Appeals deadline passed at 4:30. We had a total of 155 appointments, or 155 appellants, 24 of which were commercial properties that were over $2 million in value. So the Board of Assessment Appeals will be passing on those, and those 24 commercial properties will have the option of going directly to the Superior Court if they so see fit or so see the need to sue the city. We had 131 other appellants. 113 of those were residential real estate. 8 were commercials that were under 2 million in value, 4 motor vehicles, and 6 personal property appeals. So not as busy as last year, but was not expected to be as busy as last year, but a little slower than I was anticipating. I thought we might have a little bit more due to the fact I thought that a lot of people would have reactions to their tax bills last year. But knock on the Formica on my desk, we didn't get as many as I thought we were going to, but more than a normal second year of a reval. Another thing I would like to share is that we are just a little over halfway through the elderly homeowners and disabled program for tax relief. And we had a little over 700 people that were due to renew this year. And so far we've taken in about 400 applications with about 300 people left. In about 2 weeks, we're due to create a letter and send it out through certified mail to those people who had not applied by then to remind them that it's their year to renew, to try to stay on top of things. The last thing I'll share is that one good thing that comes out of the whole change to MSRP is that the motor vehicle BAA is going to, although still be run, is kind of become more of a thing of the past, because the MSRP, the only way that you can challenge that is to say, hey, that's not the MSRP in my car, you got it wrong. People are not going to be able to come in and say, hey, look at that scratch on my fender, or look at that dent that I don't want to fix because I don't want to spend $200. They can only appeal whether or not their MSRP is wrong. They can't even appeal mileage any longer, which is one of the wonderful things the state didn't share when they wrote the law. So it's going to be our job to get the word out when it's time for the major car push come over the summer. I gotta craft a little letter for August to be sent out when we do the public notice for the BAA in September. And one thing of real note, my assistant assessor started on March 3rd. So we're getting him trained up and taught into the Norwalk way of doing things. And I probably will try to have him on with me next month so that you guys can all meet him.
That would be great.
Outside of that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
How are the third party that we brought on to check that vehicles are registered in Norwalk? How is that? I know they just we just discussed that last month, but how is that going so far, or whatever work that they're doing?
It's going well. They're a little behind schedule because they have 2 people that do the overnight shifts. One of them was sick for a week, and they also lost some time due to the bad weather after they started, but they're getting back on track. They're probably about a week and a half behind of where they wanted to be at this point. And when I say this point, it's not like we were supposed to be sending bills out at this point. They were going to just be finishing the first sweep at this point. So they're about a week and a half behind according to the management, and working diligently to get back on track.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you guys again next month.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul.
Have a good night.
Alan Lowe, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I just want to know something, just technical question. You folks voted before. I think Councilwoman Heather left the meeting, so you say unanimous. I'm not sure if that's the right statement.
It's unanimous based upon the committee members that are still in attendance in the meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. Item F, which is an update on the fiscal year 2025-2026 operating budget process. Our CFO, we asked just to give a quick update as to how things are progressing with the operating budget.
Hello again. Process is going well. We've gone through all of the city side of the budget, all the departments on the city side of the budget. We have a meeting in about 20 minutes with BET to go through the Board of Education and also to look at some of the open items that are remaining to be discussed. Among those open items, we don't anticipate any major changes in appropriation. It's mostly just responding to questions from the BET. So we don't expect the result of any of those open items to have any major impact on the budget at all. I see Tom Ellis is there. I don't know, Tom, you want to add anything to it? I think it's been a pretty good process so far, and moving along at a pretty good pace. And the last with Board of Education tonight, that will be the last of those reviews.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add. Obviously, the Board of Education is the biggest single line item on the operating budget, but it's been sort of interesting. Some of the larger departments, like the police department and public works, have been pretty smooth and gone with a handful of questions and moved right along. But there have also been others that have a pretty de minimis amount of money that have garnered much attention and focus and questions, but and everything in between, which is okay. It forces people to be on their toes and justify their requests. So yeah, we're almost there. And yeah, after this, I'm just looking at the operating budget calendar. Oh yeah, importantly, the public hearing, the BET's public hearing will be next Wednesday night at 6:30. So pass that along to any of your constituents or interested individuals to take feedback. Yeah, but other than that, we are Tuesday, April 8th is the next big step where the Common Council will set the final cap. So barring anything major coming up tonight, I don't anticipate the cap changing at all. So that's where we stand at present.
Great, thank you. So we're anticipating that we'll stay at 2.5 on the city side and 4.0 on the Board of Ed side.
Yeah, that blended rate, I believe, comes out to about 3.38. So yeah, no changes yet unless something significant comes up. So it was interesting last night. We were talking about one line item that was actually a reduction going from 15,000 to let's call it 10,000, and there was a fair amount of dialogue. And I actually did the calculation today, and that comes out to if we were to make that change, it's less than a penny on the average tax bill. So
I was planning on using that penny somewhere.
well, it's but it's okay. They were asking some questions that I couldn't answer, and it's not often you get some individuals in front of the BET, and it's their opportunity to find out what goes into the numbers and dig a little bit deeper. So it's I wouldn't call it a fruitless effort by any stretch, but it's you learn a lot by going through these things. That's for certain.
Good, that's great. Well, I mean, those pennies add up. So
They do. They do.
I didn't mean to make joke of it, but
Yeah,
if we had several line items where we made reductions, it can have an overall impact to the household. So
yeah, I didn't mean to minimize it, as one of the BET members said. Doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. It's taxpayer money, and they have a right to give their feelings and ask questions.
right, exactly. Okay, great. Any questions from the committee members as it relates to the operating budget process and where we're at currently? Okay. Thank you for that. We'll continue on in the agenda. We'll move to new business. Item A, which is special capital appropriation relating to school HVAC grant projects. And it looks like we have a number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I think we can. Well, why don't we take them one at a time, because there might be discussion or narrative on each one. So we'll start with item 1, which is approve the allocation of $4,981,378 in special capital appropriation funds for interim funding of the state's 60% share of the project costs in compliance with state HVAC grant requirements for Brian McMahon High School HVAC improvement project. We have a motion on this item. Councilmember Doug Sutton, thank you. And we have Alan Lowe from our building management to discuss this item along with the remaining HVAC grant. So Alan, anything on item 1?
Yeah, just a little bit of history. I'm sorry. Good evening. Good evening. Last year around this time, actually before this, December last year, the city approved an application to the state for funding for 6 HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, air conditioning projects for school construction. The 6 projects are listed here. And the city's reimbursement rate is 60%. And typically for the state does not reimburse the city for repair and replacement projects. So typically when on these like a mechanical system, boiler project, and air conditioning, mechanical system replacement, it's not reimbursable. But this program offers the ability for city to apply for this grant and at the same time get the regular, our new reimbursable rate of 60%. So it is something that's very valuable. Otherwise, our reimbursable rate would be somewhere probably like 32%. So it's almost double what our reimbursement would have been. Again, we may not be eligible for reimbursement if we don't apply this grant. So we submit 6 projects. The state approved all 6 projects. And as far as the grant application projects, we have to approve the city shares, which is 40%. And the state gave us approval back in May of last year, and excuse me, gave us approval May of last year. We since had hired engineering firm and also hired the construction managers that develop these projects. So we are actually out to bid right now. But as part of this process, we need to provide funding so that we can fully execute this contract, as well as because the state share is 60%, there's a little bit of a cash flow. I wouldn't say concern. I think there may be some cash flow shortfalls as the project starts going to the latter part of the project when we're using it, we use up our money and we hasn't got all the reimbursement back from the state. So we intend to submit interim reimbursement to this request for reimbursement to the state probably every month. The most is 2 months, so that we can kind of get the reimbursement back to the state as soon as possible. The state has a requirement that they will hold back 5% retainage of their share at the end of the project until auditing. So out of 60%, they will hold back 5% of that 60% for probably around 3 years after the project's finished. So we have some cash outlay for a little bit of time that we need. So in order to continue these projects, we are requesting that the city approve the state share as an interim financial support to cover the state share. But again, we intend to continue to request interim reimbursement so that we will not be out this amount throughout the length of the project. And I would believe, I think this is more a Jared's question. I don't know how much of this we really need to borrow. I think it would be some probably short-term borrowing for maybe 5 years, maybe kind of thing. But we don't need to borrow for this project. We don't need to borrow $5 million. We probably maybe 10% of that for
Yeah,
short.
we really shouldn't need to borrow anything for this. Any of the borrowing that needed to be done has already been authorized. That's what Alan was referring to a year or so ago when this project was initially approved. That's what you had approved. You approved the authorization to spend the city portion of it, the portion that the city was going to put toward this project, and also the authority to bond for that portion of it. And so what these are doing, and it's the same story for each one of these six, is we need authorization, whether it's state money, city money, doesn't really matter. We need authorization to spend that money. And so that's what this is doing. It's just authorizing us to say, okay, in the case of Brian McMahon, you now have the full authority city now have the full authority to spend the $4,981,378 of the state money. So that's all this is. There's no additional commitment on the city side. It's really more of a pro forma formality, so that we can spend the state money that we knew was already coming in.
Okay. Council Member Ann Witherspoon.
Thanks. So you're clarifying it as for me as you're speaking about it, Jared, but I'm sort of stuck on so if this is interim funding, this is something that we're going to bond over a period of time before we get the reimbursement from the state. It enables the project to go forward. Am I understanding that correctly?
So we will bond. So what we did was there was very little amount that was going to be spent until, I'll say, and Alan can comment more on this, until July or so of this year. There was just a little bit of design work, so we bonded that portion of it. It was about somewhere around $1 million, $1.5 million that we actually issued bonds for. And then the remaining amount, we'll talk with Alan again before we go out to issue bonds again. And he'll kind of give us the sense, like, over the next 12 months at that time. So when we go out to bond in, let's say, August of this year, we'll have a conversation with Alan, and he'll say, we're going to get all these done over the next year, and so we'll have to bond all of the balance that would need to be issued for which you guys have already approved and have already authorized. Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
The one quick question. Alan, you mentioned the state holds back 5% of the reimbursement for somewhere around 3 years. Does that also include interest, or is it just a straight 5%?
Just straight 5%. So if the discussions say if their contribution based on our calculations $1 million, at a certain point they will stop at 95%, and then we finish the project, but they hold back 5%, so that when they go for auditing, they decide whether our amount that we projected was correct or not, and then that's intended to protect their side of the financial responsibility. So yeah, there's no interest in to talk about. It's just straight value.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions related to the allocation for Brian McMahon High School? Okay, seeing, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving this allocation show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous. So we will move this item to the full Common Council for a final review and approval on Tuesday, March 25th. Item 2, approve the allocation of $1,996,352 in special capital appropriation funds for interim funding of the state's 60% share of the project costs in compliance with state HVAC grant requirements for Brookside Elementary School HVAC improvement project. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Johan Lopez. Thank you. Anything addition to add to this one, Alan?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the Brookside? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous again. Thank you. Item 3, approve the allocation of $2,475,127 in special capital appropriation funds for interim funding of the state's 60% share of the project costs in compliance with state HVAC grant requirements for Marvin Elementary School HVAC improvement project. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Ann Witherstrand, thank you. Anything to add to Marvin?
No.
Okay, great. Any questions related to the Marvin? Okay, hearing seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this allocation show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Item 4, approve the allocation of $1,815,319 in special capital appropriation funds for the interim funding of the state's 60% share of the project costs in compliance with state HVAC grant requirements for Silvermine Elementary School HVAC improvement project. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Doug Sutton, thank you. Anything to add, Alan, on Silvermine?
I don't have any. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor of this allocation show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Item 5, approve the allocation of $6,395,171 in special capital appropriation funds for interim funding of the state's 60% share of the project costs in compliance with state HVAC grant requirements for Rowayton Elementary School HVAC improvement project. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Johan Lopez, thank you. Alan, over to you. Anything on Rowayton?
Not really either.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions on the Rowayton allocation? Seeing, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor show by a raise of hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. And finally, item 6, approve the allocation of $3,877,126 in special capital appropriation funds for interim funding for state 60% share of the project costs in compliance with state HVAC grant requirements for Narragansett Elementary School HVAC improvement project. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Ann Witherstrand, thank you. Alan, anything on Narragansett?
Not this one either. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous. Thank you. So all 6 of these items we will bring forward to the full Common Council on Tuesday, March 25th for final review and approval. Thank you, Alan, for your input. Moving on in the agenda, item B, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a 3-year purchase agreement with Soft Choice Corporation, Inc. for SQL and Windows Server maintenance. The annual amount shall not exceed $19,844.13 with a total amount not to exceed $59,532.39, account number noted under the city IT cybersecurity. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Doug Sutton, thank you. And we have with us our Director of IT, Joyce Liu, to take us through this authorization.
Thank you, Chairman Burnett, and good evening, everyone. So the purpose of this agenda item is to renew the Microsoft Windows Server and SQL Server data center license for the next 36 months. This license are crucial for maintaining the functionality, security, and performance of our IT infrastructure, which is support essential operations across a city department. So Microsoft have transitioned to an annual subscription core-based licensing model, which is now applied to all the newer version of a Windows Server and SQL Server. For us, for IT to ensure the best value, we reach out to 3 vendors and review their quotes and select the most competitive bid from soft choice. So we opt for the multi-year agreement because it is allow us to secure the best price for the and is provides the stability for the operating budget over the next 3 years. I'm happy to answer any question you might have about this purchase.
The only question I have, Joyce, is in relation to is the Board of Ed using the same maintenance platform, or are they using something different? And I asked that question to see if there's any quantity savings if the Board of Ed and the city was using the same maintenance platform.
Right, we have a different kind of environment. City have a 3 data center, one in PD, one in fire headquarters, another is a IT department. And David, for Board of Education, they also have their own data center upstairs, and also we shared the data center in the fire headquarters too. So we are kind of separate entity, so when it comes to the licensing, it's about how many end user and how many cores we're using. So it's unfortunately it's not something that we can, but we do share the vendor when we got a better quote. When lots of time I will tell David, or they will share with their quote and let us know which vendor have a better quote for this kind of service and for those license. So that's
Right.
the collaboration we have between city and Board of Education IT.
Yeah, just to add to that, our between government and education is 2 different licensing SKUs. So they do look at it differently. We have to purchase through a collective consortium that holds the Microsoft agreement for us.
Okay, thank you for that
They got a better
clarification.
deal.
Okay. Any questions on this item? Okay, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this authorization show by a raise of hand. And it is unanimous. Thank you. So Joyce will bring this forward to the full Common Council next Tuesday, March 25th for final review and approval.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Great, thank you. Item C, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to submit an application to the state of Connecticut for grant funds provided under the state of Connecticut's Local Capital Improvement Fund for Local Capital Improvement Program, $859,498.31, which is the 2025 grant. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Johan Lopez, thank you. We have our CFO Jared Smith to take us through the LoCIP program. So over to you, Jared.
Yep, thank you again. Good to see everybody again. And this is our annual LoCIP grant. This is a formula grant from the state. Provides funding to across the state to all cities and towns for a variety of capital improvements, pretty much whatever the cities want to use it on, as long as it is a capital expenditure. And so this is our allocation. Again, it's a formula grant, so they look at different aspects of the city, including, I believe for this one, they take a look at what your miles of road are and things like that that might be covered. And the way, as I said, cities can use it for different things. We apply it toward our paving program. And so we use this grant toward paving.
And the amount is fairly consistent with what we've received in past years.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Any questions about this authorization? Well, we're glad to receive something. So,
Yeah.
with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this authorization, show by raise of hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. So, we'll move this to the full Common Council next Tuesday at the meeting on March 25th.
Thank you.
Item D, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a grant assignment certification SFY 2026, assigning State of Connecticut 13B 38BB Elderly and Disabled Demand Response Municipal Grant Program apportioned funds to operate for Transportation Services Coordinating Entity, Norwalk Transit District. City match, $390,000, account number noted. Do we have authorization on this item? A motion, I should say, on this item. Thank you, Councilmember Johan Lopez. And we have with us Matt Pence from the Norwalk Transit Authority to walk us through this authorization request.
Sure. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. This is an annual process that we have. The state has what they call a municipal grant matching program for elderly and disabled transportation services. In Norwalk, the amount that we are eligible is $70,732. Norwalk Transit we serve as the coordinating entity, so we can apply, we can receive the funds, but we're mostly just a pass through. One of the criteria is that we're eligible for the funds, but it's matching funds. So if the city reduces their contribution to, in this case, it's the senior center, then the match would also be reduced by that same amount. So the amount that you guys are discussing, $390,000, is the same amount. It's held flat for last year. So we're eligible. And this is authorizing the Norwalk Transit District to be the coordinating entity. So with this approval and the mayor's sign off, I then move forward to submit the application. We receive the funds, and the $70,732 lately has been split 50-50 between Elder House and the Norwalk Senior Center. I know those funds mean a lot to them, so we're happy to be the coordinating entity, and that's the process here. So
Great.
happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Yes, Councilmember Johan Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. Matt, quick question. Is the amount ever subject to change in the future, or what the state essentially provides municipalities it's consistent?
Yeah, I've seen it change a little bit. It's the allocation. I don't know the overall amount, but I'd have to check. But they look at population. I don't think it's every year, but every few years. And so the $70,732 is they look at the demographics and the amount of seniors and eligible passengers that we have here in Norwalk. And so if those percentages change relative to the state in total, then we're either going to get more or less. But the overall pot, I have not seen change much over the past few years.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thanks.
Yeah, good question. Thanks.
Great. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this authorization show by a raise of hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. So Matt will move this to the full council next Tuesday, March 25th, for final review and approval.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. And finally, item E, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to CLT Corporation for the supply of 300 Chromebooks for an amount not to exceed $136,800, account number noted. Do we have a motion on this item? Councilmember Ann Weatherstrand, thank you. And we have with us David Hop from the Board of Ed IT Department to walk us through this request for Chromebooks.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're well. As most of you know, the Board of Ed is fully one-to-one for the students. They all have their own device. 3 of our middle schools 4 years ago received a grant for Digital Promise and Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. And all the students were issued brand new CTL Chromebook devices with the SIM cards for Wi-Fi. Those original 3 schools are now about 4 years in, and we're just looking to do a refresh. And right now, 300 would cover about approximately 1/2 of the incoming 6th grade class for next year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, one question that I customarily ask is, are there any those that are being replaced, do we recycle them through to the younger grades, or how do we handle the 300 new coming in, the 300 old? How do we recycle that or repurpose them?
Sure, of course. So these ones are a little special because they have the SIM cards. The SIM cards can be disabled. We can pass them down. For most of them, what they end up doing, the ones we end up replacing are, because they're being replaced, they're not in a place to be used. So they get picked for parts and then they get recycled after that. But we have in the past, when they weren't the Verizon ones, we push them down to the lower grades where they're not used as heavily.
Okay. Any questions related to this authorization? Yes, Councilmember Johan Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dave. Quick question. So, 4 years from now, would a request like this will come through for a new set of Chromebooks?
Right. So we try to. So the Chromebook life used to be around 5 years. They extended the licensing on those so that they can be updated for even longer. What happens is it's the wear and tear that comes in more often. They're heavily used. These are kids, so we have to work in new ones here and there so that we can keep them cycling through. That's why it's only about half per. So the 3 schools, Nathan Hale, West Rocks, and Ponus, is about 528 students. No, 592 students, excuse me. So with about half of that, we can kind of keep the fleet going, I guess is the best way to explain it.
Okay, thanks. And as a quick follow-up, are Chromebooks notorious for poor longevity?
No. It's the wear and tear that's tough. That's why that's to Mr. Burnett's question. A lot of times we're reusing the ones that, say, have a faulty keyboard for a monitor, for a screen, and another one that might have, or a touchpad, or an audio jack and things like that. So it's
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. If there's no other questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this authorization show by a raise of hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. So, David, we'll move this to the full Common Council next Tuesday, March 25th, for final review and approval.
Oh, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time, is what I meant to say before I forgot to unmute.
No problem. Great, thank you. All right, that completes our agenda for this evening. So, do we have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Doug Sutton, thank you. I'm sure all hands are going up. It's unanimous. Oh, we had an extra hand. All right, great. Thank you for your time. For this special meeting, it was a little bit earlier, but we finished earlier. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Have a good night.